Hello, all. Welcome to our seminar of the day, First in Class Hit Finding the In Silico Way. I'll start with a brief introduction for myself. I come with almost 18 years of experience in the pharma industry, having worked in roles across multiple pharmas in India, marketing, strategic planning, and been with business development function for the last 12 or so years, and largely selling India to the world. At Jubilant, my remit includes drug discovery services sales for the US and Asia Pacific markets. A brief outline of the session is provided here. We'll take you through a brief company information or introduction, followed by which we have a short video for you to watch our new site in Greater Noida, which is one of the most modern chemistry site and scheduled to launch in April 2021 with a capacity of over 500 FTEs. I'll then make a speaker introduction and hand over the baton to our speaker of the day, and he will take you through a couple of case studies on the computational chemistry work that we have done at Jubilant. Intermittently, we'll do pause to take some questions, and we'll also have some polls popping up on your screen. So please make time to answer those or ask your questions whenever you have one. And of course, at the end, we will also have an open Q&A session. So let's get started. Jubilant Bhartiya Group is what we all represent here from the Jubilant side, and we are part of the Jubilant Pharmova organization, which has been around for well over 40 years now and had an annual sales of almost $800+ million for the last financial year. The Pharmova business is split into pharmaceuticals and the contract research and development services, which we represent here. In the pharmaceuticals business, they do specialty pharmaceuticals, active APIs, as well as solid dosage formulation, and a very strong sterile fill finish setup that they have based out of Washington State in the US. The contract research business that we represent has a strong repertoire of expertise in the small molecule drug discovery space, wherein we work right from a target being identified all the way to a candidate getting selected. And several functional elements of the small molecule research are embedded in the Jubilant Biosys organization. Next up is our Jubilant Ingravia Group, which is basically the bread and butter business for Jubilant, and it has been into the fine chemicals business for over 40 years. Moving on to the next slide, we'll talk about our locations at Jubilant Biosys. We have 3 locations in our business right now. And the first up is Bangalore, which is our integrated drug discovery suite. Here we run cross-functional teams having take our programs from target identification to a candidate selection, and the interplay of all the functions is put to test, and our essence here is to have the ability to drive program in an accelerated manner towards the end goal. The Noida Center is a chemistry only site. Here we have a team of almost 350 chemists working right from milligram scale to multi-kilogram scale synthesis of analogs. And we have this done in both non-GMP and GMP setting. We do have a pilot plant in GMP. And the third location that you see is our Greater Noida site, about which I'll also show you a video in the next section. Here we are actually setting up a state-of-the-art 500 chemist FT site, and we are commencing operations in a couple of months. So here I talk about some of the new technologies that we have onboarded at Jubilant in recent times. And all of these technology investments are made to make with one goal in mind, which is to accelerate decision making on our client program and help fast track drug discovery process. So one of them is a flow chemistry unit, which is used by our scale-up group to make efficient transition from a medicinal chemistry route to a amenable scale-up route. The next up we have is a SPR platform. This has been a very potent tool for us to use in fragment screening in the early stage and generate hits on our new programs. We have Rapid Fire, which helps us do high throughput screening for our in vitro group. And we have OrbitRap, which we use for metabolite identification at the late lead optimization phase. Lastly, we have a AI ML platform, wherein we are repurposing our legacy informatics database for us to use local computing power and come up with ideas around drug repurposing, new target identification and validation, which we flip over to our customers for them to consider a new program launch in their therapeutic area. So let me not take much of your time and take you through this video about our Greater Noida site.
Welcome to Jubilant Biosis CIRC, our soon to be completed Chemistry, Innovation and Research Center. As you can see behind me, we are still in the process of creation of this uniquely designed, digitally enabled facility. We are building one of the largest discovery chemistry facilities in India.
The world-class CIRC design is uniquely flexible to aid efficiency and time saving.
We look forward to virtually hosting you at Jubilant Biosis CIRC. So connect with us now to know more.
So with that, I'll transition into the webinar of the day and make a quick introduction to our speaker of the day, Rajendra. He comes with almost 17 years of experience in traditional as well as computational chemistry and has begun his career with Eli Lilly Research Center in the UK. He's been a long hand at Jubilant, worked for almost 14 years, and prior to that, he did work with another CRO. Rajendra comes with a MSc from the University of Hyderabad and also has an advanced degree from the UK. During his tenure, he is leading the computational chemistry group at Jubilant Biosis, and he's guided several virtual screening campaigns and scaffold hopping efforts for hit identification. His team has also been part of teams or groups that have delivered more than 5 clinical candidates on other targets too. So with that, I'll hand over the baton to Rajendra, and over to you, man.
Thank you, Saurav. I welcome everybody to this webinar. As my colleague Saurav has already told, the title of the webinar is First-in-Class Hit Finding, the in silico way, wherein I describe about the computational chemistry methods we use for finding the critical starting chemical matter for first-in-class targets. And we use several methods for that, including virtual screening, scaffold hopping, and others. So in this webinar, I'm going to give details about 2 case studies, one of which is a virtual screening that we did for an oncology and pain target, and where I'll give you the steps we undertook, and as well as the hits, the number of hits and the hit rate and other aspects. Next, I'll switch over to the next case study, which is on a first-in-class kinase target, wherein we used scaffold hopping method to find novel cores. And again, I'll give you the steps, various steps we followed for this, and as well as the hits we got from this exercise. And then I'll switch over to, in general, computational chemistry capabilities at Jubilant Biosis, wherein I'll speak about how we assemble the databases and how we conduct the virtual screening campaigns for different targets, be it first-in-class targets or any kind of target. Lastly, I'll touch upon machine learning. What are we doing about machine learning in Jubilant? How we are learning the newest algorithms out there and then applying those to various data sets and endpoints like tox endpoints, PK endpoints, ADME endpoints, or even target endpoints. So let me begin with the first story, which is a virtual screening for a first-in-class target. And this target was given to us by a US client, and this target was picked by them from a gene expression profiling study, and is involved. This target is involved in gene regulation, lipid metabolism, and cell-associated growth. So this is a very good target for various indications like stress, pain, inflammation, and drug abuse, because it is involved in significantly potentiating the uptake of anandamide, the endocannabinoid. The expression of this target is quite elevated in the course of neuropathic pain, malignant glioma, and various other neurodegenerative diseases. So this is an excellent target, and the client has given this target for oncology. So at the start of this program, we didn't have any known selective inhibitors for this target. There was one inhibitor known, but it was binding more potently to other targets of the same family. And so that was a challenge going ahead for this program. So this is the virtual screening that we did, as well as the scaffold hopping that we did for this particular target. As I said before, there was one particular compound known to bind to this target, but it was potently binding to other targets of the same family. And fortunately for us, we had this compound co-crystallized with the human protein structure for this target. And so we used that protein structure for enabling the structure-based virtual screening for this. And we also used the bound conformation of that compound to enable scaffold hopping. So in case of the virtual screening, we use, as I said before, we use the structure co-crystallized with the compound. We use that for virtual screening, and we use Schrodinger Maestro tools for this, enabling this, where they have the high throughput virtual screening module. So we went through all the steps as prescribed by the module, and in the end, we picked about 1,000 compounds and redogged them just to make sure that the binding modes are correct and the interactions are correct. So from this exercise, by sitting with medicinal chemists and other computational chemists, we were able to select about 40 compounds which were procured from a vendor. And then on the ligand, the scaffold hopping side, we did the scaffold hopping using Cresset Spark module, which is based on molecular fields. And then we selected about 6 scaffolds, and 4 of them were synthesized in-house. So in all, 44 compounds came from this exercise. And as I said before, 40 were procured from the vendor and 4 were synthesized in-house. So from this 44 compounds, when tested in a surface plasmon resonance assay, SPR assay, we found 22 compounds showed a potency better than 10 micromolar, as well as 10 compounds within this showing in nanomolar range. And we used for this particular virtual screening exercise a 4 million compound diverse drug-like database. So these are the results that we got for those 22 compounds. As I said before, one of the compound was known to be binding to this target, although it is not very selective for this target. And that compound, when tested in SPR assay, showed a potency of 11.6 micromolar. You can see in the table the 22 compounds which have much better potency than this particular compound. And 10 of these compounds showed a potency in the nanomolar range, the most potent being in the row 13, which is about 70 nanomolar. So this was a tremendous achievement for us. And this is an extraordinary result coming in from 40 compounds that we procured and tested in the same SPR assay. So moving on to the next slide. So as I said before, this was an extraordinary achievement for a structure-based virtual screening effort. And this was a tremendous result. And I don't think in my stint here, we ever got this kind of good hit rate from a structure-based virtual screening effort. So all these 22 hits are being tested currently in secondary assays. They're very, very novel and quite diverse. As I said before, there were no novel selective inhibitors for this target. And now, after the virtual screening, we are able to find 22 of very novel, very diverse hits. And one of the critical point here is that the tools give us a lot of choices of hits, but it is to us and the medicinal chemists when we sit together and look at each of those compounds, their binding modes, and note down their interactions. That's the subjective analysis we put in every campaign that we undertake. And this has resulted in this tremendous hit rate for this from this virtual screening study. So visual inspection, evaluation, and subjective evaluation is a key ingredient in any kind of endeavor using computational methods.
Hi, Rajendra. I'll just request you to pause for a moment here because I've received few questions. So let's take a couple of questions before we move on to the next case study. So the first question is from Dan, and the question goes as, Would homology models be good substitutes for experimental targets, especially for virtual screening?
Interesting question. So it all depends on how good the homology model is. So usually we have a good experience in producing homology models, building homology models. And the two critical steps in the course of homology modeling is the selection of the closest homologue based on either sequence-based search, or we also use fold-based, fold recognition-based search, and the correct alignment of the target as well as the sequence of the homologue. So if the homologue is very close to the target, then I think the homology model could be very reliably used in virtual screening efforts. But if it is very distant, I'm not sure how reliable that is going to be in going ahead and using it in the virtual screening efforts.
Thank you. The next question is from Bruce, and the question goes as, why do you think that structure-based methods for virtual screening are not as good as the ligand-based methods?
Again, interesting question. So the structure-based methods are dependent on the kind of docking program we use. And most of the commercial docking programs, small molecule protein ligand docking programs, are not very good in terms of, if you take a bunch of compounds, correlate their docking output in terms of score with their potencies, we will never get a good correlation. And so that is one of the reasons why we don't rely on the structure-based methods for virtual screening, whereas the ligand-based methods are much more accurate because they capture, for example, the pharmacophore models capture all the functional groups involved in very interesting interactions. And so when we use those models, you get several compounds which are very novel and have the same kind of interaction points. And the same goes with shape-based search as well as 2D similarity search. So I feel in our experience also, we have seen in several programs, whenever we ran structure-based virtual screening methods, they didn't much give a very good hit rate, but the ligand-based methods gave a very good hit rate in whatever programs we use.
Yeah, thanks. Rajendra, we have another question coming in from Miles, and I request all other attendees to also type in their questions whenever they have one. And not all will get answered on this live webinar, but definitely towards the end, if time is available, we'll take up all of those. So Miles is asking that inputs used are critical for a good virtual screen. So what was the source used for compounds in the virtual screen?
So I'll describe about those in a later slide, wherein we assemble the database of 4 million compounds, 2 million compounds, and 1 million compounds. These all come from one of the chemical vendors, their in-stock collection, which is more than 7.5 million. We apply a lot of filters and then trim it down, and then apply a diversity-based clustering method to give us these 1 million, 2 million, and 4 million very diverse database of drug-like compounds.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on, Rajendra.
Thank you, Saurabh. So the next story I'm going to describe about is about scaffold hopping for a first-in-class kinase target. So this target again was given to us by a US-based client, and this kinase has been involved in promoting cell proliferation, survival of cells, genesis of tumors, and in the end leading to chemo resistance in several human cancers. And so targeting this kinase with inhibitors, very selective inhibitors, could inhibit the kinase signaling, stimulate the anti-tumor immunity, and in the end can lead to drug sensitivity for various cancer drugs. And so at the start of this program, we didn't have known very selective inhibitors for this kinase. There were some known inhibitors binding in this kinase, but they were more potently binding in other kinases, be it in the same family or in other families of kinases. So that was the challenge. And as you all know, getting a type 1 orthosteric kinase inhibitor with very good novelty and selectivity is very, very difficult in the very crowded kinase inhibitor space. So this was a challenge going ahead into this program. So in this slide, what you're seeing is the simplified scaffold hopping procedure that we follow. So it all depends on whether the target structure is known or not. So if the target structure is known, we follow the structure-based method of scaffold hopping, wherein we take the bound ligand conformation, co-crystallized or put docking posts in a homology model, and then use that for enabling the scaffold hopping. In case the target structure is not known, then we use the known chemical matter and then enable the ligand-based scaffold hopping methods. So whatever method we use, once the hits come, we actually sit down with medicinal chemists, look at those novel cores and their interactions, make sure that the critical interactions are there in these novel cores, and then go ahead for selecting the final compounds, which can either be procured or synthesized and tested in a biological assay. So for this particular first-in-class kinase target, we followed this particular steps for the scaffold hopping. So the program we have used for this scaffold hopping is Cresset Spark, which is based on molecular fields. And so at the start of this program, the client has given us 6 compounds that were other kinase inhibitors, but they were found to be binding in this kinase also. And their potency was to the extent of 85 to 90% inhibition when tested at 1 micromolar concentration in the biological assays. So these 6 compounds were the reference compounds for us going in for this scaffold hopping. So when we took each of these and did the scaffold hopping run, we combinedly found about more than 5,500 cores. And then we took a look at all these cores, made note of their binding modes and the interactions, and selected more than 1,700 of those. Then as a matter of routine, we actually redog them just to make sure that the binding modes are correct and the interactions are indeed there, shown by these novel compounds. So we did with that with Schrodinger tools. So we did with the LigPrep, the ligand preparation, conformational search, wherein we got about more than 370,000 conformations for this 3,900 plus cores. And these cores would involve tautomers, isomers, as well as different ionization states for each of those compounds. So when we did that redocking and then we visually inspected all the cores, we also applied a threshold of ligand strain energy, wherein we considered only compounds showing less than 2.5 kcal per mole of strain energy. So in the end, we ended up with more than 450 unique compounds. Again, the critical ingredient here is visual inspection, making sure that the binding modes are there and the critical interactions are shown by these binding modes. And thus, we selected about 15 cores, novel cores, and then one of them is being pursued currently. So for this exercise, we found that the starting compounds had an inhibition of, as I said before, 80 to 95% inhibition when tested at 1 micromolar concentration. And we selected 15 of the cores. A few of those were synthesized, and one of them is being currently pursued. And the best compound of this series shows 3 nanomolar potency. And so the selectivity of these against other kinases has to be established ahead. This is an ongoing project. And so one of the key element in this whole exercise, as was the case in the earlier exercise of virtual screening, is the subject to visual interpretation of the cores, and also sitting together with medicinal chemists, looking at synthetic feasibility of those cores, and then accordingly selecting those. So that subjective evaluation is very critical, as I said before, in any campaign that we undertake.
Thanks, Rajendra. I'll again interject here because we have a question this time from Phil. And the question goes as, can constraints be defined while performing scaffold hopping?
Again, interesting question. So it all depends on the kind of software tool we are using. So fortunately in Cresset Spark, it is possible to constrain some of those molecular fields which represent critical interactions. And so my guess is this is there in most of the scaffold hopping programs in any software suite, and it should be possible to constrain certain features or certain molecular fields for getting the cores which retain these interactions. Yes, it is possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajendra.
Okay, so moving on, I'll describe about, in general, the computational chemistry services that we provide. So be it for first-in-class targets or any kind of targets. So once we start any structure-based or ligand-based methods for finding the critical starting chemical matter, We use those in the next phases of the drug discovery program, refine those methods, and improve those methods for better predictions of be it binding affinity or properties. When multiple methods are used in virtual screening, we consolidate the hits and apply data fusion methods for a much better hit rate. So whenever a project gathers a good data set of considerable size, we apply machine learning methods to build a model that can predict all these endpoints much better. So I'll touch upon the machine learning methods that we are using towards the end of this webinar. And we use those machine learning and deep learning methods for various endpoints, including target-based endpoints, admit endpoints, tox endpoints, and PK endpoints. So I'll pause here for just a minute to tell you about the software tools we use. So we use Maestro, the Schrodinger Maestro tools for almost all computational chemistry work, including virtual screening and several other computational chemistry tasks like Pharmaphore modeling, QSAR modeling, and others. For scaffold hopping, bias-resistor search, and very good understanding of the structure-activity relationship, we use Cresset Spark, which is based on molecular fields. So these two are the software tools we use. Although these tools are present with other groups and other computational chemistry groups in several companies, the way we differ from those is how we use those, how effectively we use those. And whenever we run scaffold hopping or virtual screening campaigns, we learn from those campaigns, correct our mistakes if there are, and also use the effective methods in the next campaign. That's how we do the computational chemistry at Jubilant Biosys. So there was a question on the databases, and so here is the information. We don't have any in-house physical collection of compounds or fragments with us, but we do have the in silico collection of databases of drug-like compounds or fragments and focus libraries coming in from chemical vendors. So right now, we have the in-stock collection of MALPORT, which is more than 7.5 million compounds. These have been filtered, and I'll speak about this in the next, probably in the next slide. These have been filtered by applying various filters, and in the end, we form several databases of 1 million, 2 million, and 4 million number, and then we use those routinely in the virtual screening. So in terms of the virtual screening, as I said before, whenever multiple methods of screening are used, we consolidate the hits, apply data fusion techniques to ensure a very good hit enrichment. And if there is time for any program, we undertake short benchmarking studies to know which methods seem to get a better hit rate and select only those methods for the actual screening. So we draft workflows, the virtual screening workflows for each target, each client in a tailor-made, in a specific way, using all the best tools and methods that are available. And the experience of each campaign, virtual screening campaign, is applied to the next campaign. We learn from the mistakes and the effective methods and then apply those for the next campaign. So this is about the database that we have for virtual screening. So as I said before, we have collected the MALPORT in-stock collection of compounds, which is more than 7.5 million, and applied various filters, including Rios, pan-assay interference compounds, frequent hitters, and promiscuity filters, apart from physicochemical property-based filters like molecular weight and calculated log P. So once these filters are applied, we end up with about more than 5 million compounds. And then we apply diversity-based selection, especially using the sphere exclusion clustering technique, to form a 4 million, a 2 million, and a 1 million database of diverse compounds in this way. And to enable faster screening, we put these through the Schrodinger phase database so that it can work faster and make sure that the energy window is kept at 4 kcal per mole. So any compound having an energy window lower than this is present in the database, and we use these for the routine virtual screening exercises. So this, in short, is the virtual screening workflow that we follow. So whenever a target structure is there, we use structure-based methods like high-throughput virtual screening. We also use a pharmacophore derived from the binding site, wherein the key compounds and interactions are taken note, key amino acids are taken note of by the program, and then it builds a pharmacophore and we use that pharmacophore routinely in the screening. If the target structure is not there, we can build homology model and use that as good as a structure-based method. In absence of that, we use the available chemical matter and enable ligand-based Wurzel screening methods. So among the ligand-based methods, we can build pharmacophore models and use those for screening, as well as we take the shape of the most potent compounds and do a shape screening, or use those for 2D similarity search. So when we use multiple methods, we combine the hits and apply data fusion techniques so that the final collection of compounds give us hits. So we also use either the top rank compounds or cluster for enabling a diverse set of compounds. So whenever we use ligand-based methods for Wurzel screening, provided a starting chemical matter is there, it takes about 1 week to complete. In case of structure-based methods, it takes about anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks to complete. And both these methods and timelines are using a 1 million database. So as I said before, I'll touch upon the machine learning efforts that we have undertaken in the Jubilant Biosys Computational Chemistry group. So we are learning every day from the latest algorithms out there in the public and applying those machine learning as well as deep learning techniques to various data sets. And so all this exercise starts with a problem statement. What is the model is going to be built for? It could be an ADME-tox endpoint or PK endpoint, or a target-based endpoint wherein we have to build a model for prediction of activity. The models could be regression models wherein the activity is predicted, or classification models where at a particular threshold of activity, the compounds are classified. So whatever be the statement, once we define that, we collect data. So the data set consists of compounds and activity values. Those activity values can be, as I said before, any endpoint, target-based endpoint, or PK ADME-tox endpoint. So once the data is collected from publicly available sources like ChemMel and BindingDB, as well as in-house programs. Once we gather a good data set of a considerable size, we use that also. Sometimes the client also provides a data set and we use that for building the models. So once the data is collected, we clean the data by removing the duplicates, and multiple activities for the same compounds are taken care of. We remove inorganic substances and other things. So once a clean data set is there, we split that into training set and test and validation sets in a ratio of 4:1. And once the data is split, the descriptor generation takes place, and we use several in-house programs as well as open source programs for generating variety of descriptors like PADL, Dragon, and the Schrodinger module called Canvas. That the programs we also use for fingerprint generation as well as smiles, and all of these go into model building. As we all know, most of these all descriptors and fingerprints sometimes give out noise to the model, and so we apply several descriptor as well as feature selection tools to select a subset of these features or descriptors that can go into the final model building. So once a subset is selected, once a subset of descriptors or features are selected, those for the training set go into model building. And the model is built and tested using the test set and validation sets. If the model we find using several parameters like accuracy, specificity, and sensitivity, we ensure that they are correctly predicting, and then we deploy those into a platform. So going ahead in future, what we would like to have is a deep learning and machine learning based platform wherein hits coming in from several approaches like Wurzel screening, scaffold hopping, or rational design, which is done by our medicinal chemists, can go into this platform wherein we have a lot of machine learning and deep learning based models plugged into this. So currently we have models for HERG, NAV 1.5, CAV 1.2, which are indicative of cardiotox. We have a model for brain penetration, as well as some of the kinases that are to be avoided, as well as aggregation-based inhibitors. Currently, we are trying to build models for genotox, mutagenicity, drug-induced liver injury, drug-induced kidney injury, as well as several skin models like skin sensitization and skin permeability. So we anticipate a lot of these models to be built and plugged into this platform, wherein we, as I said before, several hits coming in from several approaches like virtual screening and scaffold hopping can go into this platform and come out clean, or not having any kind of liability, so that the progression to the next phase is faster. So right now we are trying to build a pipeline, coding it using several kinds of toolkits and programs. So this pipeline starts with a Kimball ID. Kimball ID is for a particular target or an endpoint. Based on that, the pipeline actually gathers the data automatically from the open source sources, and then apply several kinds of programs to clean the database or the data set and generate the models. So we apply 3 thresholds for classification models, like 1 micromolar, 10 micromolar, and 30 micromolar, and accordingly the data is put into that. And once the clean data set is there, we split that into training set and test set in the ratio 4:1. And then we generate various features and descriptors, as I described before. And all these the features are then selected using feature selection techniques. And after a subset of features are selected, those are scaled and normalized. And then in the end, we apply several machine learning as well as deep learning methods and algorithms to this particular data set. So this whole pipeline starts with a one single Kimball ID, and very soon we generate more than 63,000 models from this pipeline. And several of the top performing in terms of accuracy and specificity and sensitivity are picked up by us and tested using a test set. And once satisfied with the accuracy and predictiveness, we deploy them into the platform. So as I said before, we have models currently running actively for CardioTalks. The CardioTalks prediction involves putting the compounds through 3 models. One is HERG, the 11.1 potassium voltage gated channel, the sodium voltage gated channel 1.5, and as well as calcium voltage gated channel 1.2. As you can see, we have these models, and any compound blocking any of these channels can lead to cardiotox. So it is best to avoid any compound, if possible, to block these channels going ahead further in the drug discovery. So we ensure these with very good accuracy. As you can see on the right hand side, for all these 3 models, the test set accuracy is more than 90%. So if you have 100 compounds, for 90 of them, the prediction is correct. These are classification models, and we have 3 thresholds defined for classification: 1 micromolar, 10 micromolar, and 30 micromolar. We combine these 3 and then take a consensus view for the final classification of a particular compound. And so for any kind of endpoint, we try all possible algorithms, both the machine learning as well as deep learning algorithms, and apply all those algorithms to the data sets and see which one of these is performing. As you can see, for the HERG model, the deep learning models are much better, whereas for the NAV 1.5 and CAV 1.2, both the machine learning as well as deep learning methods are comparable. And all of these are more than 90% accurate. So in conclusion, I would say that we have a very good experience of running virtual screening campaigns for various targets, be it first-in-class targets or any kind of targets. As said before, the virtual screening can provide us the critical starting chemical matter to the medicinal chemists so that they can start developing those as a series and establish the structure-activity relationship for that particular target. Virtual screening avoids the expensive and time-consuming nature of high-throughput screens. It could be very fast and could be more effective if used correctly. So the critical point here is the subjective visual check of all the hits coming from whichever virtual screening method that we use. In the end, we learn from the data sets, apply machine learning algorithms to the data sets, and create or build models wherein these machine learning approaches also can be built into the virtual screening campaigns, so that the hit rates are much better by using the predictions from these machine learning methods. So in the end, what I would like to say is, if you're looking for starting chemical matter for your first-in-class target or beta hit rates for any kind of target, I think virtual screening is one of the best methods to give you that critical starting matter. And please look no further than Jubilant Biosys for enabling the virtual screening campaign for your target. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rajendra. So, guys, all the attendees, I'll request you to type in your questions if you have any right now. We are also conducting a poll which is popping up on your screen. So please submit your response on what you would want to hear from Jubilant in the coming webinars. So, couple of questions, Rajendra, that I see coming in here. So, of course, people are thanking you for the great talk. So, again, I'm conveying those messages to you. So, one question is, what are the factors that are driving decision to go for MD simulations in a given Medichem project?
So that's a great question. And so MD simulations are usually used whenever the simple docking programs or small molecule protein ligand docking programs do not give you a reliable binding mode or the interaction that you wanted to see. So often, most of the commercial docking programs have a rigid protein, whereas the ligand can be flexible. And so because of the inherent flexibility of the protein side also, we don't get a very good binding mode predicted for your ligands. And so those are the cases wherein we can go for molecular dynamics simulations to get a very reliable binding mode for your ligand, provided the and also the molecular dynamics simulation also takes care of the explicit water molecules, so wherein you can see the water interactions also for your ligand or as well as the protein target.
Thank you. So the next question I have is around the polar surface area. So can you tell what has been the polar surface area of compounds which have been less than 10 micromolar?
I think most of those polar surface areas, I think you're referring to the virtual screening hits that we got 22 out of the 40 compounds. And so those were in the range of anywhere between 40 and 70. So that is a good range to have. And so those, and also can probably penetrate brain. So whenever we get hits, those are not just the starting points. We expand them in order to make sure that the polar surface area as well as other physical chemical properties are in the range of where the is in the range where it is expected to be. So that's how we ensure whenever we start with the starting chemical matter and explore and expand that as a series.
Understood. Thanks, Rajendra. So one of the last questions that we'll take, as we are also running out of time. So commercial databases have some errors because compounds in the vial are not the molecules that are on the label at times. So what has been your experience in this space?
We ran several virtual screening campaigns, and in almost all of those campaigns, we have procured compounds from various vendors. We dealt with vendors like Enamine, Asinex, Chemdew, and now we usually deal with Walport. And I never came across such a reason wherein I have to see a different compound with the label on the vial being different and the compound in the vial being different. We never experienced that kind of problem with any of the vendors that we dealt with, fortunately.
I think what I would add here is reliability of vendor is also a function of the type of vendor we choose. So at Jubilant, what I am learning is we always go to the tier one vendors, and that way we make sure we are ensuring the integrity of the process is not getting compromised.
Yes.
So with that, I like to thank everyone for taking their time out and attending this webinar. if you want to get any information from us, please reach out to us at bd@jubilantbiosys.com. As I have said, this webinar has been live streamed and it will be available on LinkedIn or on YouTube social media channels. So feel free to pass it along to any of your colleagues whom you feel could benefit from this webinar. So with that, thank you for joining this, and I wish everyone the rest of day a good day for the rest of their day. Thank you.
Thank you all.